For me, Nyck De Vries is one of the most talented drivers in the world who isn't in Formula 1, and there are some who believe that he should be given an opportunity to showcase his talents in the pinnacle of motorsport. He has gotten quite a few accolades in his career, but does Nyck De Vries deserve a shot in F1, or has his time passed? Discussing his career, and first off, Nyck De Vries had one of the better karting careers, winning multiple championships ranging from the WSK World Series to the FIA World Karting Championship, which he won in back-to-back seasons by the way. This was before moving into NEC and Euro Cup versions of Formula Renault 2.0 for the 2012 season. He did particularly well in the NEC version where he finished in the top 10 despite only racing in half of the events, one of those including a win. He did solidly in the Euro Cup as well, claiming 5th overall. He'd race again in the Euro Cup version along with the Alps version of Formula Renault in 2013, and he similarly didn't improve, coming 5th in the Euro Cup version, but in the Alps version he finished 8th overall, which was great considering he'd only competed in 6 out of 14 races. 2 second place finishes were his highlight here. If De Vries had any early criticism of stagnating development, he put those critics to shame as a sensational 2014 in the Alps and Euro Cup categories saw De Vries simply dominate, cruising to championships in both categories, with 9 wins in Alps and 5 wins in the Euro Cup version. He beat out some big names too, like Alex Albon, Charles Leclerc and George Russell. But of course, I do recognise that these drivers were about 1 to 3 years younger and less experienced than De Vries at that stage. De Vries, after 3 seasons in 2.0 categories, moved up into the Formula Renault 3.5 World Series, where De Vries looked strong against what was an experienced field of drivers. 6 podiums, including a race win in the season finale, was enough for the Dutch driver to secure a top 3 finish in the standings, capping off a terrific campaign. Promotion into GP3 ensued for De Vries in 2016, where although it looked like on paper he had a good season finishing 6th overall with 2 victories to his name, when you compare this to Leclerc and Albon who were in the same ART machinery and finished 1 and 2 for the season, with De Vries at least 40 points behind the bunch, then you do realise that with De Vries being the older driver, probably saw this season as a missed opportunity to show that he can hang with what would be the big names. But he still showed plenty to convince Ratpax Racing that he deserved a seat for them in the newly rebranded Formula 2. The 2017 season saw De Vries perform decently, with some good highs such as a win at the Monaco sprint race and the Baku feature race in back-to-back occasions. But there were some lows as well, where he went pointless in 4 of the final 6 races of the season with new team racing engineering. This saw him lose momentum for a top 5 finish and had to settle for 7th in the standings. Still not a bad season at all, with 5 podiums claimed in his rookie campaign. De Vries was seen as one of the championship contenders going into the 2018 season. Although he got back-to-back second place finishes in the opening 7 events, those same 7 races saw De Vries retire the car in 3 of them. From there on, he was to be a regular in the top 5 for many races, and he managed to accumulate 3 wins for the season. The Dutchman's early struggles were enough to see him lose out to George Russell, who won the championship, while De Vries even lost out on top 3 in the standings to Lando Norris and Alex Albon, and had to make do with 4th. Every driver who finished above him, of course, went on to get Formula 1 seats the following year. De Vries kept himself active in the World Endurance Championship before coming back for a 3rd season in GP2. The season didn't start out as intended for De Vries, as he could only secure 1 podium in 5 outings early in, while main contender Nicholas Latifi secured 3 wins in the same appearances. 3 wins in the next 4 for De Vries, including 2 feature races at Monaco and France, saw De Vries catapult himself right back into contention. The main difference between the 2 drivers from the midway point all the way to the conclusion was consistency. De Vries proved to be the more consistent driver, scoring podiums on most occasions of the second half of the year, as he went on to score 266 points and win the Formula 2 championship. He, however, could not obtain a seat into F1 despite becoming F2 champion, while rival Latifi secured a Williams drive. He would also win the 6 Hours of Fiji with Racing Team Netherlands in the LMP2 class in 2019 and compete in the World Endurance Championship for a second season in that same class before joining the Mercedes Formula E team. In the COVID-affected 2019-20 season, De Vries had mixed results. A stretch of 4 races in 5 outside the top 10 damaged his chances for a top 5 in the standings and ended up finishing 11th overall, despite a podium finish to cap off the season. During the middle of 2020, De Vries would turn his attention towards the European Le Mans Series, where he made a few appearances. The highlight for him was winning the 4 Hours of Portimao with his team at G-Drive Racing. He then participated in his second season of Formula E, where he was involved in a highly exciting championship battle. 2 wins out of 5 to begin the season put De Vries in a really good position early in, despite the regular retirements and issues he was facing, but at the same time, this could be said for the vast majority of the field. 2 crucial second place finishes going into the final rounds ensued. De Vries would be right there for the final rounds. The last race of the season at Berlin had several drivers still in mathematical contention, but 8th place for De Vries here was enough for him to secure the Formula E Championship. And as of currently, the Netherlands-born driver is competing in both the World Endurance Championship and the European Le Mans Series with a win already to his name here. But does Nyck De Vries deserve an F1 opportunity? Well, I do think if the grid still had 24 drivers like it did a decade ago, then yeah, I think he'd be able to make the cut, despite the fact it's taken longer for him to develop compared to most F1 drivers. But I think with some big talent coming through with the likes of Robert Schwartzman and Oscar Piastri in F2, and even F3 drivers in Dennis Hauger and Jack Doohan, it might be hard to justify giving a seat to someone who'll be 27 next year. If you flip the other side of the coin, however, and De Vries does have some great credentials. He's a F2 champion and he still clearly has a lot of world-class racecraft, winning the Formula E Championship very recently. It is definitely not impossible for him to come into F1 at a mature age. Just look at some past examples. Damon Hill was 31 when he competed in his first season of F1 and he went on to become world champion. And even looking at more recent examples, like Romain Grosjean, who was 25 when he returned to F1 and carved out a very solid career. Sebastian Bourdais was 28 and he did relatively well against what would eventually be a 4-time F1 champion in Vettel, and Brandon Hartley debuting a couple weeks out from turning 28. We can't forget that either. De Vries is currently Mercedes reserve driver, and with Mercedes connections with Williams, there have been rumours of De Vries possibly joining the team in 2022. His abilities have been backed by Toto Wolff as well, with the Austrian team principal suggesting that De Vries deserves a drive in F1. For my overall take, I do think De Vries can be a respectable driver on the F1 grid, and I'd love to see him in F1. However, I just don't see a team wanting De Vries as a great long-term investment, especially when there are arguably more talented youngsters who are moving up the chain as we speak, and you got to consider his age as well. If he is to ever get a seat in Formula 1, it has to be for the 2022 season, as opportunities will dramatically dry up by then, if they haven't already. Let me know if you think Nyck De Vries is worthy of an F1 seat, and don't forget to like the vid and sub for more content.